Day 215 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I am just trying to help myself. Justin The Dogfather, which reminds me of the 1996 Snoop Doggy Dogg album, The Doggfather, says, I don't think it's working out for you, so basically you're on day zero. This is a variation on the "you're not ignoring the Trump administration" comment that I get so often. I went to Justin's account, and he is a very active user, which I have respect for. I will also praise the consistent color palette of Justin's account, which is in the shade of MAGA red. Now, as I have stated profusely, I have nothing personally against those who support the leader of the Trump administration because I understand human behavior. I understand our inclination to follow a leader who you are willing to give over a portion of your life to. Someone might give over a portion by just giving a vote. Some will give over a portion by making video after video after video, wearing the uniform that the leader has prescribed for the followers to wear in order to help indoctrinate and identify further followers. You might say, Josh, but you're also giving yourself over every day with video after video after video about the leader of the Trump administration. Well, Justin, I have to let you know that things are not always the way they seem. I have used the leader of the Trump administration like he uses his followers in order to get your attention, which I obviously did. And when I got your attention, I conveyed a message about my beliefs and values, and you listened to it. Now, Justin the Dogfather, maybe you are also conveying a message about your beliefs and values, or you may be conveying a message about the beliefs and values of the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration, which are the beliefs and values of a lifelong con man and convicted criminal manipulating his marks. I'm okay with that. Justin, are you okay with that? Okay. The difference between your message and mine, however, Justin the Dogfather, is that the beliefs and values I am conveying are about the freedom to have beliefs and values, and the message you are conveying attempts to suppress and oppress the beliefs and values of anyone who doesn't agree with you. I'm okay with someone living their life in a way that is not like mine, whereas when I see you, Justin the Dogfather, I see someone who is saying, I am not okay with you living your life in a way that is not like mine, and in fact, I am going to make many, many, many videos wearing the uniform prescribed to me, which indicates just that. Justin, I have enjoyed our little collaboration. I hope you have a good day. And now I will go back to ignoring the Trump administration. Day 216 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. Why are there 2,000 members of the National Guard who have been authorized to be armed in Washington, D.C.? I brought this up with the conservative friend I chat with at the Panera. He wondered if there was a terrorist plot on the dark web that maybe we don't know about. Now, I brought this up with him because I wanted to get his perspective specifically because I knew he would have one that would be something I didn't think of, and he did. On the left, a prominent theory is the reason the National Guard is there is because the leader of the Trump administration is trying to wall himself in pending some sort of national revolt. This could very well be, but you could come up with anything. You could say that it's because the leader of the Trump administration plans on turning every single building into a McDonald's, and you will find someone out there to say that is exactly right. Frankly, that would probably be cool. Did you know that McDonald's used to have a breakfast mascot named Birdie the Early Bird? I have been enjoying the McMuffin recently. You have to eat it, though, as soon as you get it because it needs to be hot. Because when it's hot, then the English muffin is crispy, the meat is juicy, and the cheese is very melty. I'm talking, you wait 30 seconds and you're screwed. It's the same with their fries. You wait 30 seconds and you're screwed. But anyway, I didn't think of this theory that my friend did, which is that 2,000 members of the National Guard are in D.C. because maybe there's some kind of plot that the government knows about that we don't. Now, I'm not saying that's true. I'm just saying that it is as reasonable a thing to think as any other. However, on that second theory, that would mean that those very nefarious people who have infiltrated our government are sitting down and actually saying, we are going to try to wall the president in anticipation of a revolt. This means that these people would have to be intelligent, and I think it is very clear that these are not smart people. They're aggressive people, they're angry people, they're morally bankrupt people, but they're not smart people. Do you remember the way Pete Hegseth's kids looked at him on TV? They looked at him like, Dad's a fucking embarrassment. I can't wait to turn 18 and get the fuck out of here and change my name. That was the look on their faces, and I hope they accomplish that. This is a gathering of dum-dums, so me and my conservative friend at the Panera can agree that it's wait and see, and we just gotta keep on living life. Got to. Because you don't know when it's gonna end, so you gotta just keep on living it. We'll find out eventually if the guard is there purely for intimidation, but for now, let's keep on ignoring the Trump administration. Day 217 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm more of a granola type of guy, and I'm just trying to help myself. There is nothing wrong with admitting that you got caught in a con. If you went to the store and bought a product and you brought that product home and it was defective, you wouldn't be embarrassed. You wouldn't feel like, hey, I got conned. I don't want to admit it because I feel stupid. You would just go back to the store and return it. You can do that with the leader of the Trump administration. It's not like you have to admit you were conned, but there's nothing wrong with admitting you were conned, because the con man's goal is to make you his mark and then shame you into letting him continue to con you because you don't want to admit you were conned. That's his goal. Stop letting the leader of the Trump administration fulfill his goal on you. You are an independent person who can make your own decisions in life. Blindly following the leader of the Trump administration, and therefore the Trump administration, is keeping you from fulfilling your own personal destiny. Now, I would go further to say you don't want to follow any gods either. But you do you, because we do have to get through life, and many people choose to get through life with faith. But faith in an earthly man, especially a man like the leader of the Trump administration, is false faith. Someone like the leader of the Trump administration relies on you to bow down to his will as he thwarts the will of others who will not. I don't want that for you. I don't want you going into the store and buying yourself, in the words of the leader of the Trump administration, a big, beautiful box of Fruity Pebbles, for example, which is just by that name, a very woke cereal. So I will change my example to a more manly cereal like Cocoa Puffs, for example. I don't know. That's kind of woke too. Let me think. How about Tough Patriot Grains and Rocks? That's better. I don't want you to go in there and buy your box of Tough Patriot Grains and Rocks and then go home and there's very little rocks in there, and then you're ashamed to bring that box back to the store. So think about that in terms of the leader of the Trump administration. Go ahead and bring that leader of the Trump administration right back to the store from which he came. And that is a store called Stop and Shame. And then from that point on, you can play a different game, which is ignoring the Trump administration. Day 218 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I do not have a Glock. I am just trying to help myself. Black women and Indigenous women are the future of America, because Black women and Indigenous women are the most systemically and historically oppressed members of American society, based on how America was built and based on how America was founded. This is the history that the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration would like to erase. Only when Black women and Indigenous women have secured the power to run this nation by continuing to be duly elected to do so, Will the country that has systemically and historically oppressed them be made whole? And only then will their oppressors either adapt or wither away into nothingness. I have talked about how when I was in my mid 30s and Barack Obama was elected, I was still young enough and naive enough to believe that this marked the end of racism. But as I see nearly 20 years later, that was only the beginning of racists seeking revenge. But luckily, as we have seen, Black and Indigenous women continue to elevate to positions of power, most notably in the candidacy of Kamala Harris, who I have pointed out many times ran a campaign that was only 4 months long, received 75 million votes, and only lost by 1% to a man who didn't even get 50%. I have full confidence that Black women and Indigenous women will run this country in my lifetime, and that the constituents they represent will appreciate their work, appreciate their representation, and appreciate their communication, because Black women and Indigenous women understand systemic and historic oppression and do not have the inflated egos of fragile, old, racist white men who get emotional when criticized. Have you seen how these people are clearly rotting from the inside with anger and hatred? Poor babies. But for now, we must continue to suffer until we learn our lesson and get an education as we continue to ignore the Trump administration. Day 219 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I do know what the word mockery means, and I'm just trying to help myself. Before we get into today's celebration, I want to celebrate the overwhelming amount of negative, angry, and hateful comments that I deleted about yesterday's video, where I specifically referenced Kamala Harris and a country, aka America, founded in G-side and S-slavery. Once again, the trolls of the internet, be they bots, meaning manufactured by a computer, be they bots, meaning indoctrinated by the leader of the Trump administration, or be they bots, meaning agents living in another country hired to leave such comments on behalf of their traitorous leader, once again, the trolls of the internet have proven the point I was making. We are seeing a situation where the fear of Black women and Indigenous women running this country has made itself clear and present, which, to an optimist like me, says that I am on the right track. So thank you. Now, point 2 today, before we celebrate, is about Gavin Newsom's trolling of the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration, and the fact that the average mark of a con, all the way up to the complicit accomplices of the leader of the Trump administration, do not seem to understand what mockery is, or even what the word mockery means. They seem to think that Gavin Newsom is trying to be like Donald Trump and don't realize he is making fun of Donald Trump. And frankly, I hope they continue to think that, because it lets the rest of us know, just like anyone leaving angry, hateful comments about Kamala Harris, it lets us know just who will need to eventually adapt or wither. Lastly, today, on day 219 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration, I want to celebrate with you 15%. That's right, 15%. We are 15% through the final term of the leader of the Trump administration. And based on what I am seeing on his hands, the final term may be coming to an end sooner than expected. On such a day as this, once again, I will remind myself and you that the point of this exercise is to remain mindful, optimistic, and hopeful. We are only given one life, and we do not want to spend it taking in too much bad news, racking up too many negative views, and regretting the choices we choose. Use your time mindfully, optimistically, and hopefully without cluttering your existence with too much information. And the way to do that is to ignore the Trump administration. Day 220 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. Okay? Sometimes I'll hear someone making what sounds like a cogent argument for the leader of the Trump administration. Now, since day one of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration, I have said it is about taking in less information, less news, less data to occupy our minds. And by regaining that time, we can be more creative and bring better versions of ourselves into the world and into the world of the people we love. When I have suggested taking in less information, I am mostly referring to information that supports the point of view of those of us who believe that the leader of the Trump administration is the most nefarious individual we have known in our lifetimes. But it can go both ways, kind of like David Bowie in 2002. When I mention a cogent commenter, I mean there are some people who are members of the cult who will say regarding the leader of the Trump administration's rollout of the National Guard, for example, he's making the streets safer. What's wrong with that? And they will make a case for this point of view with what sounds like rational, measured arguments. This approach is not dissimilar to how left-wing podcasters, for example, mostly very rich people who are doing just fine, make rational, measured arguments against the leader of the Trump administration. The thing is, they must get on their podcast every day to talk about the leader of the Trump administration as if his policies are something worthy of discussion, just like the cogent commenter who defends the leader of the Trump administration as if his policies are something worthy of discussion. In both cases, they are making these arguments as if the person they are discussing is not motivated by one single focus. If you take it up to the next level, as someone like myself who is very interested in human behavior does, you will see a man with a lifetime of treating people horribly, with a lifetime of taking advantage of the misfortune of others, with a lifetime of breaking social norms. He comes from that. He was raised in that. He is doing exactly as one would expect of someone who was brought up in that environment and never inclined to change. By simply stepping back to understand human behavior, we know that what appears like someone just sending in the National Guard to clean up the streets is not. By simply stepping back to understand human behavior, we know that the motivation is to serve some personal need of Donald Trump, to control others, to hurt others, and to degrade others who do not experience the miserable existence that he does. We will not subject ourselves to this degradation, and so we will ignore the Trump administration. Day 221 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. I want to talk about what happened in Minneapolis this week, and not in terms of what the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration did or didn't do, because it doesn't matter. Those people don't give a shit about anybody except themselves unless it affects them personally, so it's irrelevant to talk about it. I'm also not going to talk about it in terms of gun control. I'm not going to talk about it in terms of Republican versus Democrat. I'm not going to talk about it in regard to the gender of the deceased perpetrator. I want to talk about courage. I want to talk about the fact that we have 8th graders jumping on the backs of 4th graders to protect them from losing their lives. We have 8th graders taking bullets to protect the lives of 4th graders. And I can guarantee that the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration and Democrats and independent elected representatives would not have the courage of 8th graders to jump on top of 4th graders to protect them from bullets. I don't know what I would do in that situation either, but I do know that I wouldn't be thinking about how it makes me woke or not woke.
There needs to be a serious reevaluation of what it means to be a person. Not an American, a human being in this world who walks around consuming as much as possible on the backs of others, while eighth graders are jumping on top of the backs of others in order to keep them from being unalived, or as we say in the actual world, killed. It is bullshit, and the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration aren't going to do anything about it. And before you get in that comment section, I don't think Democrats or independents are going to do anything about it either. Maybe Bernie Sanders would give his life to protect some innocent school children, but that's about it. It is up to the people of America and the people of every nation to get a grip and realize that being a human means protecting other humans and ignoring the Trump administration.
Currently in the hotbed of conspiracies, the hotbed of conspiracies where I live is here at the P. If you seat yourself next to a group that is in the throes of cult behavior, you will hear things. You will hear things that rock your world. I like to repeat those things with those people sitting mere feet away, and because I think that by doing that, I might project the energy that, hi, there is a sane person near you. Pick up some of this sane vibe. The thing I heard just now is if someone is wearing a mask, I will not do business with them. He described a mask as similar to a chain link fence, trying to keep out mosquitoes. Completely oblivious, obviously, to the fact that the virus is transmitted through droplets, and those droplets are prevented from dropping on your ass by a mask. I noticed something that I think is a code that I want to convey because I just observed it. This particular gentleman, the chain link fence analogy gentleman, says, not says. I already told you what he says. He said a few other things too. He said, you know how you go get your car painted and when the guy's wearing a mask, when he paints the car and then he still has some paint on him? There you go. He is wearing a hat that is MAGA red, but it's not a MAGA hat. It's just like Carpenter's Union or something, but it's MAGA red. So I'm thinking that that is some kind of code to let other MAGA know, because most MAGA they won't wear a MAGA hat. You know why? Because they know they're hated. They know they're hated by the population. That's why they don't wear it. They know that if they were confronted, they would not be able to defend themselves because they are weak. You know how they're weak? Because they're in a cult. Anyway, these gentlemen have now gotten up and walked away. Why? Because they probably heard me making this video and they knew, like, hey, look at that guy there. Obviously a lib. Look at those glasses. But little do they know, if they try me, if you try me, I'm scared of me sometimes because when I can summon that anger, it can be wild. I grew up in an abusive home. I had to defend myself. One of the ways I defended myself when I was a young child and small was to get crazy. I can still do that.